is part of the live stream. That's, as we
it's
go
true.
live, that's something that I think, unfortunately, we can never get away from. I'm sure some people like immediately start up. Like it's like going live on professional television where like everything works. That's not this show.
Well, maybe when we, we've got a couple more meetings. We need to go up to the board. But when we launch the Software Defined Talk intern program, maybe we can get producer intern, and they'll be the ones who are.
Can you imagine being an intern for this show? Would it be like? It'd be like I don't know. Would it be an awful internship or would it be good? Because you would get a lot of responsibility. I think that's for sure. We could offer a lot of responsibility, but
yeah.
It could be the kind of thing where like I don't get paid enough for that. Like dogs barking in the background. There's a lot of stuff you'd have to like deal with. So
what's going on?
I need the key for the snakes.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm just in the water.
Okay. I'm probably going to end up locking myself out of the house at some point. But you can take this key. Are you leaving?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming to check the snakes.
The snakes? What?
for streamers who are watching at home. Not as some podcasters like to say, a little OPSEC problem here, but we're going on vacation soon, and so we need the neighborhood Americans who we're friends with. They're going to come and give the snakes water, make sure the snakes are okay.
Why do you really own snakes?
I don't own snakes. I have to help people who do own snakes take care of them.
I see. I listen now. Understood. I get. We just got a puppy, so I'm very familiar with your statements.
I've seen that. You got a TikTok puppy.
Well, I don't know. Like I'm always like, what kind of content? I want to get more visitors or more followers, and it's like, yeah, you know what? It does it? Puppies. Like I got like so much more engagement on puppy posts on Instagram than I do on anything I've ever done. So, it's just like dogs. What can you do? People love dogs.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally it. Hey, do you stream this to my LinkedIn?
No.
Okay. Well, you don't need to. I was just seeing if I should post it there, which I'm going to.
Yeah.
I started doing that and it works.
Post it to LinkedIn? Streaming it to LinkedIn?
Yeah, well, not everyone gets the live streaming to LinkedIn, but I noticed recently they added it to my account. Or maybe everyone does now, but
okay. Maybe we need to look at that. We do. This goes to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. I don't know. Is anyone still on Facebook? But that one was easy to set up.
We're in the
Twitter.
metaverse.
Yeah, it goes to Twitter too. I'm not sure anyone watches on Twitter that much either.
Yeah. I don't know. I did some of my Tanzu Talk stuff, the podcast reboot. I stream those to these places, and people watch. There's many people who watch at least 3 seconds of it, according to the metrics.
That's your engagement metric? You just like, is that on the OKRs?
Yeah. 100 views of 3 seconds or more.
That's right. Total views, not engagement. Never. That's a little pro tip. Never be measured on engagement. Always on just raw numbers. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Outcome-based measurements are for someone else.
That's right. Don't be pinned down unless you're getting like a tremendous amount of money. Then yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
Don't. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting like a lot of money, then that's different.
So here's what I was thinking. I know I'm eating, but
yeah, it's part of the pre-show. It's part because you're eating because you're getting everyone prepped for our live event that we're gonna do on August 27th in Austin, and we need to decide a location. So like, are you like you're eating to get motivated to pick a bar or restaurant? Yeah. Is that what's happening here?
And it's also inspiring what I'm thinking my opening topic is gonna be. So
fantastic! I look forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, so. For everyone streaming, watching later, and any other time, we're going to have a meetup on August 27th. The link will be in the show notes. And for the streamers, I will post here momentarily. I think we're going to have between 10 and 20 people, Kote. That's my early results, if you will. So we need to pick a place in Austin. That's right. That's what I'm forecasting for attendance. We need to pick a place in Austin. Now, of course, I don't know everyone that's coming to the meetup, but I know a few, and it feels like we have people scattered around the larger Austin metroplex. So I feel like I think it needs to be kind of central, but of course, when I say central, I mean like 35th Street. That's central.
Yeah,
like I know, like there's downtown, but downtown is not the center of Austin.
No, that's no good.
Downtown is like a little bit further south. Which
if you think parking in Amsterdam is hard, you should try parking in downtown Austin.
That's true. I want it to be in a place where you can just pull up a car with a reasonable certainty that you get a parking spot. So having said that, and since you will be the guest of honor, what are you thinking?
No,
So that's kind of like where you used to live, or one of the times you used to live there.
I've got two ideas, two general ideas. One, we should either go to like a classic Tex-Mex place, right?
Okay.
Or we could go to like Style and Switch. Like that's kind of central. And I think it's also, I don't know if they take reservations, but I think it's also big enough potentially. Although it'll be outside too, so that's no good. That place is too small.
I feel like that's not. I feel like that can't hold us. Right?
No. That's, I was thinking like if you could reserve reserve a table at the patio at work, but then I remembered it's going to be hot.
It's hot. It's really hot still here.
So that doesn't work. Never mind. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know what are places. I haven't been there in like almost in 4 years, Brandon.
All right. Well, what we'll do during the ad break, while we get everyone a chance to like get logged into the chat, we'll bring this question up again, and we'll see by then if we have some Austinites recommend where should we host it.
No.
Otherwise, I've got.
Can we take reservation? Does doing a reservation work? What's your confidence in that? Like we're gonna have 10 people.
Yeah, I mean, we could try. Like, I was thinking, like, we wanted to make it more informal to start. Like, hey, people can kind of just show up, right? We can kind of just gather, and we kind of get a sense of like who's there and what people want. Like, have some drinks, hang out, and then we can kind of figure out what we want to do. We could try the reservation. I mean, it's not like that's impossible.
We could have it at Costco. That'd be fun.
Listen, man, a couple $1.99 slices of pizza and
hot dogs
and a hot dog. I mean, hey, dollar for dollar. There's not a place on earth you can get more calories dollar for dollar or cent for cent than at Costco. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've often thought like if you just needed calories, you would just eat at Costco every single day, right? Like it's just like that pizza and that hot dog. I mean, it's fantastic.
And so what time does it start, Brandon? I'm sure you told me.
6:30 p.m.
See, there's also that. I don't know if it's still there, but there was that pizza place.
Oh, I like this. I think we've settled in on this. Yeah. Yes.
That's on Burnett.
Yeah, we get a couple
the pizza pub place on Burnett. Yeah. They have a lot. Yeah. That's a big place.
That's it's not.
I forget what it's called.
It's I'll think of it here in 1 second. Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit of a shame to go all the way to Austin and eat pizza, but actually it's fine because I actually like it. Because it's a lot different than European pizza. I'll tell you what. Like there's a whole different, and also they've got a ton of beer.
Is it Pine House pizzas?
It would be nice to have some like American microbrew beer stuff. I like that.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Pine House Pizza Craft Brew Pub, Austin, Texas. I think that's going to be it.
Okay.
All right, here. All right. I'm putting this in the streaming chat. We'll take a poll, and by the poll, I'm just going to read people's comments because I don't know how to do polls in Switch. So, but I think that's what we're going to do. That's going to be our. So that's good because then we can kind of get a big table. We could order some pizzas. Everyone can get some beers. It's going to work out.
Wow, they have 4 locations now.
All right, now this I may need to do a little recon to make sure we can get a table big enough to. All right, so that's a little project for me. I'll do a little because it will be Saturday night.
Here, they have a link on the bottom of their page called large parties.
All right,
and by that I think they mean quantity, not mass.
Like we can eat a lot, but we're not necessarily large parties.
Or just like we got 4 people who weigh 250. We're coming in there. Are these bitches going to hold us?
I feel like we could definitely take down some pizza, but I don't feel like that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it looks like you can ask for a large party, a large group.
All right. Anyways. All right, I'm going to do a little research on that. Okay, I like that though. Pizza and pints. That seems like up our alley.
Yeah. Okay. We got that.
Okay. All right, let's see. What's this? I got one thing here.
Wow, a little quiet time there.
No, sorry, I'm just
no. It's
no, dude. I got like a I got like an 8-line chat message from work, which you're like, uh-oh. Like when it's like a whole paragraph, and I was like, oh my gosh. But it's okay. I did have a moment of like,
Okay,
oh
that's
my
good.
God. It's like, oh my God, am I gonna have to close the podcast down?
Yeah, the opposite but equally distressing one is when someone writes, "Hello, Brandon."
Yeah, that's the other
And,
one. You're
and
like,
there's,
oh,
wait.
what's going on?
How are you?
Can you meet in 5
Pause,
minutes? Bring your
pause.
laptop. You're like, oh, okay, this isn't gonna go well. All right, let's let us venture. You ready to get recording?
Yeah, just let me take a sip of water here.
Okay, let me get the thing here. We good with these topics? I guess I should have asked that question first.
Yeah. I thought maybe what we could do. It might be fun to get your perspective on build versus buy things. I talked with people about that twice today, and you have your professional angle is different than mine, sort of. So that'd be fun to talk through.
Okay.
And then we could just we could talk about the Facebook and Netflix thing, just because we mention it every now and then. But I think it's a good it's annoying to talk about Fang stuff all the time or whatever, but I think it's a good case study of disruption theory and tech in action to ongoing pay attention to, and then we'll see if we get to the other stuff. Do you have a burning desire to talk about the Acorn thing? I went and looked at it.
No, the only thing that was just more like greenfield around, just using it as like kind of like I said here. It's like the hot take would be like, well, we already have this, but then like we've already said the same thing about Datadog. So it's like, is this a good, interesting way to talk about that? But no, I don't have any hot take there. I don't know. I feel like the Gladwell thing. I feel like
that
I
would
feel like I want to like I don't know. That's what maybe made
let me move that up there because
Brandon therapy. Like I don't know. I like him, but
let's put that in the. I'll put that as the second thing, and hopefully.
All right.
Oh wait, no, that's not the second thing.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do it.
And hopefully we'll get to that.
All right, what time is?
And then we have one ad break.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, one ad break. Yep. All right, man. All right, whenever you're ready, then.
So, what's your strategy for eating mixed nuts, Brandon?
I do like to pick out the cashews always. That's what I'm always immediately looking for. If you give me a bowl of mixed nuts, from there I will search for almonds, and then after the almonds, if the peanut of the nut family is left, I will eat them, but be missing the other nuts. I will eat them only when there's nothing else. Oh, what am I? And I forgot the walnut. So yeah, cashew, almond, walnut. And then basically all the other peanut remnants. If that's all that's left, I will eat them, but I won't feel good about doing it. What is your strategy?
So okay. Well, I'll get to mine. I had two mixed items today, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on it. And I think I would describe your strategy as the like stack rank strategy. Stack rank's the wrong. There's some phrase for this, but like you've ranked the nuts, and you want to take out each group of nuts.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to eat all the cashews first. Then clusters, if you will. That's an appropriate name for a nut strategy. Whereas, like, I think I have more of a let's call it a lazy round robin, right? So I don't eat all of the same type of. I don't cluster the nuts. I go around and I try to kind of like, eat a different variety of nuts ongoing. Now,
Right.
I'm not enough of a whatever the word is. One doesn't like to make metaphors to mental conditions that aren't what you don't actually have. But like, I'm not enough of an organized person to like, actually make sure I don't do two or three things in a row. But I do. I wouldn't say that like I would eat all the cashews first. That just wouldn't come up. And now the modification on my round robin style, and why I call it a lazy round robin, is I think what I'm doing is I am trying. There will be like one or two nuts that are like I would rather just be eating only that, right? Like a cashew, right? Like or like a smokehouse almond, right? Like you could. What if you had a smokehouse cashew? That would be
That's great. That's fantastic.
Maybe what I need to get a smokehouse almond bag, and I'm going to pour some cashews in there and shake it up. and then separate out the cashews and the almonds, and then we'll see what that's
Yeah, but
like.
you're like, now you're going a whole nother level. I'm assuming like the mixed nuts have sort of just been like you haven't curated your own mixed nut.
No,
right?
no,
Like,
not
like
at
this
all.
is
Not at
like
all.
you're just giving it like on the airplane or somewhere else.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
of course, if you can curate your own nuts, I only buy the nuts I like.
No,
So
but
then-
that's what I'm getting at is like now. I think what I end up doing, and I did this with a like a tropical mixed fruit, which is kind of the same thing. You cut up fruit,
Yep.
and you could buy like the container at Albert Heijn of mango for €3. You can't buy a container of only papaya. You can buy a container of like prepared coconut, like with the little brown part on it for €3, or you can buy the tropical mix, which contains coconut, papaya, pineapple, and coconut
melon
and
has
mango.
to have melon. Man, it doesn't have just like a honey.
No, it has mango.
Oh.
There's a whole other one that's like the melon one.
I feel
It's
like this is an American thing. Then it's like, yeah, like you're describing. Great, this fruit salad kind of thing you're talking about is fantastic. But at least at the HEB, it's like if you buy the fruit salad that's pre-made, you're getting a lot of crappy melon. You're like,
you're gonna get some
melon
fucking
again.
cantaloupe.
You're like, oh, cantaloupe and honeydew again. You're not getting no mango. You're like, you gotta go search out the mango separate and either mix it in. Like I went somewhere where someone made a fruit salad of all great fruits. I was like, I like rediscovered fruit. I'm like, gosh, this is great. Where does these mystical fruits come from? They're like, oh, it's just in the grocery store. It's just not in the mixed fruit thing that's already made.
Oh,
But
you
anyway,
mean I don't have to have apples and bananas in my
it's like
fruit
apples
mix?
and cantaloupe. You're like, again? I can't believe it. Again.
So here's what I found myself doing. Like I had gone into the Albert Heijn and I was like, I think I want to get the coconut, but I always after I eat the coconut, I feel like I've had too much coconut. So now I'm gonna get the mixed fruit. But the coconut in this case is the cashew of the mixed fruit, right? And so what I'm doing, I notice what I'm doing is I don't really like the pineapple so much. And at one point I was like, I think I'm eating all the pineapple in order to get rid of the pineapple, which is a whole other level of like, or you could just throw away the pineapple. That's mind exploding. And then it made me stop and slow and I was like, okay, well, I've eaten 4 pieces of pineapple. I feel like I owe it to myself to have a mango. So now I'm going to eat a mango, right? And then like, oh, I'm going to eat a coconut. And I was like, but then here's the thing I'm trying to get to is like, I want the last things that I eat to be the best things.
Oh, like you want to end on a bang. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm kind of like, I want there to be at the end, and I don't want it to be just one piece of coconut, because if it's one piece of coconut, that's just a one coconut
Leaves
memory,
you wanting,
right?
yep.
I want to have like 4 pieces of coconut left.
Yep.
So it's like a big firework bang, right? Like, and the last 4 bites are going to be equal to three times as much as the first bites were, just like a 4th of July, New Year's Eve fireworks show. And so I think, and it made me reflect, I do that same thing with mixed nuts, right? So I don't want to eat all the good stuff. I want to kind of like go through and even it out to kind of get more of an even keel of the nut eating there. And
So there are 3 strategies. Let's summarize. There's stack ranked preferred first, which is what I described in the nuts, right? There's stack ranked, eat the least appetizing first and then work your way to the good stuff, which I can tell you, I use that for a different meal. We can get into that later, probably in a future episode, because we at some point want to talk about some tech stuff. And then I'm going to call what you just described round robin, right? It's like you want to mix in, the good and the bad, but you finish in a flurry. You finish with like, so it's like round robin stacked, if you will, less preferred, then finish with most preferred. So I like it. I mean, this is probably a research paper someone's already written, but I think those are all equally valid strategies. And I probably do apply them in different situations. Nuts, as I've already said, but like if you were to just put a regular plate of food in front of me, I would go stack rank worst to best, right? Where it's like, especially if there's a lot of vegetables, I'd be like, all right. And I try to get my son on this. I'm like, hey, listen, just power through the vegetables quick, right? Get the broccoli done, get the boiled carrots done, whatever we got to do. And because you're looking forward to that protein, usually you're like, I want to get back to that protein. So let me just quickly get through the vegetables. But a lot of people think that's crazy too. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I think the 4th principle that the mother of my girlfriend in high school and college followed was eat dessert first.
Perfect. Dessert first. Oh man, that I don't think I've really never done that. Like I just like there must be some type of like Protestant American built-in guilt about like legitimately eating dessert, like actually doing it. I don't know. I don't know if I could actually do it. I don't know. I probably need to be deprogrammed or something. There's something I don't know if I could actually do it.
Yeah.
I like that though. Well, while you're eating dessert first, what everyone should do is go sign up for Teleport. It's the easiest, most secure way to access your infrastructure. And of course, when you do sign up, tell them your friends at Software Defined Talk sent you. All right. Cote, this is, I think, our one and only ad break today. So as we announced earlier in the pre-show, that was maybe some of the streaming people met. We're going to have our meetup on August 27th here in Austin, Texas. We have tentatively settled on Pine House, which is like, I think it's like 37th. I don't know. It's between like right around there. Yeah. Central North Austin, if you will. Relatively easy parking, I should say. So if you want to go to that, you should sign up in the show notes, or if you're watching this on the chat right now, which really everybody is, I'm going to put the Eventbrite in one more time. Sign up. I just need a head count. It's not like you have to do anything. There will be no follow up from this event. I just want to know if you're coming or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure as all the people watching the live stream know, it's right next to Lauderstein Conway, the massage therapy school that's been in Austin for probably over 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good landmark. That's a popular landmark all of us use here in Austin when we're just getting around town. So, I mean, absolutely. I think that's definitely. Also, I think be surprised if you didn't know that. That's probably, you're just not really an Austinite if that's the case.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Bureaucracy out of the way. Let it rip.
Well, I was talking with someone this morning from Matt Ray's neck of the woods, actually. Well, his current neck of the woods. I don't know. Is it neck of the woods where you currently reside or where you're from?
I would say either. I think you can use it either way. Okay. But you know, I'll look for a definitive ruling from someone else on that.
I think I forget the line exactly, but it's not from where you was. It's where you is. Anyways, so anyhow, and we are going over, you know, in our industry. And in the world of infrastructure software and stuff, especially if you're on the vendor side, like I am, like you are, all of that, like inevitably you encounter the buy versus build discussion. And this is particularly true in software development, in cloud stuff, because as we all know, most everything let's just say platform, most everything in the cloud, Kubernetes, container type of architecture, software development stack is available as open source. Now, obviously, you can't just go download how Amazon runs and stand up your own AWS. So there's a lot of, I would assume, a lot of closed source stuff running around there that is like the proprietary stuff that runs the public clouds. And then also, you know, vendors like where I work, VMware, we have a lot of proprietary closed source stuff that we combine together, but pretty much whatever you want, you could get open source, especially when it comes to like Kubernetes. So I'm sure you encounter this a lot. You know, there's always a discussion of like, why don't I just build my own thing straight up on bare metal, right? For whatever reason, I'm not going to be using the public cloud. That's right. Or in addition to using public cloud, I'm also going to use this. And so what we want to do is we want to build our own stack. Right. And like I'm not really looking for a obviously what I working at VMware would say is you shouldn't do that because that's what I would say. And because I've talked with many organizations who've failed at that. There's some bias that if I'm talking to them, they're probably interested in VMware stuff. So, you know, they might be interested in an alternative. But I thought I should ask you for your like what is if you were to look at kind of both cases here, like how do you yourself brand and think through this, and how do you DXC brand and person when you're doing your strategic developer focused thinking? How do you kind of structure thinking through that? How would you advise someone? Here's how to make the decision. Here's what you should be considering.
Yeah, it's definitely something, I think it comes up quite a bit. So my decision flow would be start with one, which is going to sound obvious. It's one, if you don't have any money, right? Well, then you should build it. You should just download the open source, right? I know that sounds obvious, but it's
no, that's good.
Sometimes people sometimes it'd be and I think this is the case for a lot of things. Sometimes there may be a known solution that you could pay money for that you're like, man, that's probably a lot better use of time. But I don't have the money. Like my company doesn't have the money. Like, or we don't. And really, what I mean by that is usually we don't have the budget to pay for this type of software in this, and for this kind of thing, right? So, like for example, like if you want to crop a photo, like you probably should use Photoshop. It's probably the best thing there, but it's also really expensive. And you're like, maybe I don't have that, so I'll just hack together and I'll do it like in some tool that I currently have that's not nearly as good at it. That takes me 3 times as long. So I think sometimes you just have to like identify where you're at. It's like, we don't have the money to do it. All we have is time, right? We just have our time.
Right.
So therefore we're going to do this thing. So that's like, maybe it's stating the obvious, but like you start there. Okay. That's number one. Number two then is, okay, are you solving a situation in your company that you believe is truly unique? And this is where you have to have some real openness to the outside world. It's like, sometimes you may encounter something that is a situation where it's like, hey, this is very proprietary because we have some very unusual requirements that are often not going to be met by any commercial product. Now, I'm going to say 90% of the time people think this, and it's not the case. They're like, oh, you're not going to believe it. We have to like take online orders, and we spike up in traffic, and and like there's just nothing that could do this. And then you like on the vendor side, you're like, this is the 15th call today I've had where someone's told me this. It's like, this is all we do, right? This is what the software is made for. So that's where I think you have to be. Now the opposite may be, it's like, hey, we're a governmental agency, or we're working at a scale. And I think this is where the hype, like a Netflix, a Twitter, especially early on, right? And this is why you see so much of, the technology that we talk about today kind of roll out of these, Google, of course, roll out of these large, it's like, hey, they're dealing with a scale that is so large that only they could probably solve it, because no one else is really working on
right.
that problem,
And then if I could insert, also, it happened like 5 or 10 years ago. Right?
Yeah.
When there was no alternative.
There just wasn't an alternative, and someone's like, how do I do this? Okay. So that is like, again, the trap there is most of the time, there's a tendency to like think you're in that category, but not really be in that category. So one, I think that requires introspection. You have to really decide amongst yourself, like, is that really the case? And it's probably not going to be something that once you've decided you are unique, I wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to convince someone they're not. I would just say, hey, then good, tell them how to do it and wish them good luck. And then finally it comes back to, okay, well, all right, we're not unique. The problem we're solving is pretty much, something that's been solved before. So we really are in that buy versus build discussion mode. And so the thing I would start to think about is, okay, what are you as an organization good at, right? It's like, are you good at managing relationships with vendors? Are you good at getting your team trained on technology? Are you good at working with vendors and keeping that software up to date, making sure that your vendors know what you need, make sure you kind of have a good open dialogue? Is that something that you are good at as a company? Then you're really like, that's going to be like, hey, we really should be steering towards buy. Okay, if you're not good at that, or you feel like that's something that you don't want to become good at, and you're like, I'm really good at like running engineering teams, hiring really good engineering talent, I can get the most out of, if you will, building infrastructure that is not going to directly have, if you will, line of sight to supporting a business function, but my company and I have the skills at really doing that very, very well. And I have my company and my management are behind me in investing in that kind of organization. Basically, the people, the operational costs, that's what the executive team wants to spend money on. Okay, that's what people like. That's the engineering discipline that the company is really invested in. And this is where, again, you have to really have like some introspection here. Like when you go to your board meetings, or you meet with your executives, are they asking about that? Are they interested in Agile? Do they understand the benefits? Or are they just more like, hey, you said you deliver this and I don't see it. Like, what's going on? Like, are they more bottom line business kind of generated? Because that's really going to drive that decision. So if you did have an organization that was really committed to that engineering talent, it's like, okay, then I would consider to build it. For everyone else, I'd have my vendors in. I would, really go through extensive proof of concepts and prove out that, like, yes, I can get what I want from them. And I think managing those relationships going forward is going to be better. So then I'd lean towards the buy.
Yeah. That's a good system. And I think, so the last thing I hadn't, your fourth one, which is like, let's see if I forget the strategy word for this, but let's see if your capabilities, let's see if you have synergies in your capabilities with building out this stuff, right? Like you're saying, like if your organization both wants to engineer something and you also have those capabilities, then that is a viable option. Versus if you're better at outsourcing it, not outsourcing in like people, but just like buying it like somewhere else, then that's a good option as well. If you're not good at both of those, then maybe that's a problem, or at either of those, then maybe that's a problem. But so that's that approach, I think, is what a lot of vendors go down the path of, which is the negative way of putting that is like, oh, you're probably not going to succeed at this, right? Which is like probably not the best way to persuade someone that like this is not going to turn out well for you. Which, I think is what we see a lot, right? Like you end up hearing someone, we spent a year trying to build this thing out and X million dollars and that didn't work. Like there's cases of that. Now to the point, a contra case, like is it contra? Whatever. On the other side, there is, I finally been watching some talks here and there, and I saw a talk that Mercedes gave at KubeCon EU about how I think 5-6 years ago they started building out their own Kubernetes thing, which I think is an example of like, are you good at doing that, and is that what you want to focus on? Hopefully, so that was an interesting case there, but it also fits the some of the other criteria you're going over that like, like 5-6 years ago, that's kind of what was available if you didn't want to use public cloud stuff and other options that were out there. Now, the case that like I always find squiggly or difficult is I think it was the I didn't take extensive notes. I apologize, but I think it was the third one, which is basically the are we talking about building a commodity stack, right? Something that like there's no differentiation your business is going to get by having built this thing. Like it's everyone else is going to have one of these things and it's all going to behave basically the same. Like there's no way you're not going to win based on this technology, which, famously the example of a company getting better, maybe this isn't entirely how this company like won in the 80s, but like it definitely helped out, is like I think Walmart famously had like 24-hour inventory like analysis, so they could like faster than Kmart and all these other people, they could figure out what products to ship where and like sales to do. So they had I don't know if back then they called it small data, but they had some kind of data that they were doing that they could go through, which is a total technology thing, right? And I don't know if SAS was in there or whatever, but it seems like that's the one that I always find the most difficulty, like getting people to walk along with, because like I think almost there's like, it's not a fifth one, but there's another straight or a layer running through all this, which is I guess like overconfidence of like it kind of like you were saying, right? Like even in the case where you don't have money to buy something, like you still need the skills to do it successfully, right? Like and so it's sort of like, if I don't have the money to pay to like build a balcony out of my roof, I probably shouldn't do it on my own.
Yeah, well, I think you're getting into maybe that's the deepest introspection is like, listen, if you don't have the money and you don't have the skills to do either, it's like, well, you got to kind of reevaluate what you're trying to do. It's like this may be, you need to go partner up, find, you got to go find something. You got to go find someone with the skills or find someone with the money before you do anything, right? Maybe that's the ultimate startup lesson, right? It's like, yeah, sure, everybody, that's like, such a cliche, like everyone has ideas, and it's like, yeah, of course, but it's like, okay, well, like you have to like go figure out what are the means to execute the idea. So if you find yourself you have neither, then for sure. And then back to your Walmart one, I think the Walmart one makes sense because at least in hindsight here, hindsight of course is always 2020 as we say, but it's like, okay, well, in that case it was like we need to build a proprietary system because there's no one that can provide us real-time inventory data that we need, and we're going to use this to significantly drive down costs. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but like let's just assume it was. And so that makes a lot of sense, right? That makes quite a bit of sense about why you would build it. And I think, having been around Walmart on the vendor side a couple of times, like I know for a fact that they didn't like write every line of code. Like you mentioned SAS, they bought other vendor solutions to piece together a real-time inventory solution, right? Like stuff like Remedy and things like that. So even in that case, where they're quote unquote building it, they're really, if you will, utilizing a lot of vendor products to make that a little bit faster as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know the history of what they built, but I mean, that would be. It's an example of like something. It's an example of like, because your competitors don't have it. It is technology that's differentiating, right? Like,
I think 100%, and I think for sure, like
something.
I totally agree. And this is where Amazon's famous, all their automation in their warehouse. Like I know some people here in Austin, right? They work at Amazon on the tech side, and it's like everything. When they say that, they usually mean that they're working on all kinds of like, automation inside the warehouse, whether it's scheduling, all of that stuff. And it's like, yeah, of course that pays off in spades. And so those kinds of things, I think it is. I mean, that's what you got to really think through. I just think, for a lot of people that maybe, flip it around, if you're just a small company and you're just like managing your warehouse because you're like a direct to consumer kind of brand, right? It's like, what's going to be valuable there is building a great brand, right? Like if anything, you don't even want to own a warehouse, or if you do, you want to get out of it quickly. So someone said like, I'm going to build this great direct to consumer brand that sells like, really good t-shirts, and I'm really great at building those brands. I would tell them that's great. Like you should, actually minimize or use as many off the shelf Shopify, whatever, right? To like minimize your warehouse stuff, because that's not where your competitive differentiation is going to come from.
Right. You're more in the IP area, unless there's something like truly and IP protected about the feel of your t-shirts.
But I do think, Cote, when you're having these conversations, I'd be curious to see if you ever tried this tact. It's like a lot of times you get centered on IT, but you can flip it around. Like we just kind of said this direct to consumer is a good example. It's like, okay, like if I came to you and said, I'm going to launch a new company and I'm excellent at technology, right? But I have really haven't done much on creating brands and awareness. And I said to that group, like, I'm going to create a really big brand versus like, maybe I should supply t-shirts to this direct to consumer brand, right? But if someone says to you, like, I'm this company, I've never done this before, but I'm going to build a world-class direct to consumer brand. I'm going to make funny YouTube videos. I'm going to be a master of social media. I'm going to get great celebrity endorsements. It's going to be fantastic, but I've never done any of that, right? And it's like, I don't know. Wait a minute. Like before you go down that path and you do all of that together, maybe you should call an ad agency. Getting that, you know what I mean? Maybe you should get some help.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I'm told that one of the powers of fiction is to get you to establish empathy with other people, and that's kind of like that's stratagem. There is like, let's use an analogous situation so that you can kind of like get empathy with the general structure of the discussion that we're having there. And like you're saying, and then therefore take a closer look at like, oh, right. In the same way, I mean, I'm finishing what you're saying, but like in the same way that basically we're not builders of this sort. We just thought we were, in the same way that we couldn't really come up with a brand. Like, we don't even own a license for Illustrator.
Yeah.
And so that might be a problem. Like learning how to, the only .ai files. You can open a .ai file in Preview, but like I don't know if you can do anything with it. It's such a weird.
You can't. Don't. When you see an AI file run, ask for the JPEG.
I mean, but speaking of cropping photos, like Preview is such a strange application. Like I bet if you're at Adobe, Preview is like such a frustrating application, because it's like I bet Apple doesn't even care about how many billions of market cap they've destroyed over the years that we had to fight tooth and nail to get back.
I don't know. Preview it's the ultimate thing there. Every once in a while you're like, I wish it did this, and you find out it does it. You're like, oh, this is so fantastic. They just threw that in there. Like Preview, it's a really good tool.
Yeah. So then the last thought here is, or at least the last thought I have at the moment is, when I was discussing this with some people recently, I came up with a new theory that this build versus buy stuff in the infrastructure platform layer, I kind of think is only a private cloud problem. Because if you go to the public cloud, I don't know if there's a lot of discussion of like, oh, I'm just going to buy IaaS and build all this stuff on top of it. Right? Like I'm no like Corey Quinn or whatever, but like I feel like if you were to look at the buying behaviors of people in public cloud, they buy the finished services a lot more. I don't know. Databases would be a good one, right? You could see that. You could go look and see if if there were more people like running their own databases on just raw public cloud infrastructure versus buying the database service. And that's something you could go look up and verify. But my theory would be that people just buy whatever services they want in public cloud. And so that's like if I dug into that more, that might be an interesting conclusion to have here. That really the discussion is like it's just more of like the annoyances of like building your own cloud versus using a service would be there. So I'll have to investigate further.
But I don't know. Maybe we should like come back with like some. I'll throw out some numbers that people can disagree with. But I mean, it's something like this. Like I would say, like 90% of people, 95% of people should not go build a direct-to-consumer brand by themselves. If I was to do that, I would go enlist some help, right? Just as in the same thing with, on your IT side, if you're going to deploy any type of distributed system, I'd probably say 95% of the people out there should look at something, right? Whether it be a private cloud solution, any of the hyperscalers, some type of mix, some type of hybrid thing. It's like, most people are going to benefit a lot from going in, having the vendor relationship and have somebody help you kind of do this together, right? I think very few people are going to find it successful other one. So if you disagree with any of that, you should join the Software Defined Talk Slack and then just get in there and tell me I was wrong and then tell me like it doesn't work, right? And or tell me why, because I like to do it. But like that's kind of what I would say. It's like most of the time, I guess it's just another version. It's like, hey, unfortunately, most of us are average, right? And I think that's kind of the same thing in business. Like most of the companies, most of us out there should probably go seek out some type of supported solution to help us achieve our business goals. Now, having said all that, I know there are many people who are successful doing them on their own. I just don't think that's the most common case.
Yeah, I think it's probably the case that on average most people are average. I think is where we can come out with that.
We check the map on that.
So, speaking of building your own brand, like I think we can check in on it's an ongoing, ongoing sort of thing we have here. Is figuring out what's going on with Facebook and people like Netflix. And the reason, I remember several years ago, I was like, I don't want this podcast to talk about all the FANG stuff all the time. But I think the fascination with what goes on in the Facebook world is, at least for me, and also Netflix to a limited extent, is like, well, it's a good example of like late stage disruptor theory, right? Where like it's easy is the wrong word, but like a lot of what people focus on in disruption theory, especially in the tech world, is like how to be the disruptor, the startup that comes in and like, messes up a market to their advantage. Mm-hmm. Insert orthodox definition of disruption theory.
Yeah, here, but I was thinking about this less about like the exact Facebook situation, but I was thinking about this because Facebook famously has, the Sun Microsystems, which a long time ago used to work at. Anyway, if you go to Facebook's campus, like they on the new sign that says Facebook, they kept the old Sun sign, on the back, right? And I think that is, if you kind of hear Mark Zuckerberg and other people talk about it, it's sort of like it's an idea to remember, or at least this is what I take from it. It's an idea to remember that if you can be displaced very easily, right? Things can happen, right? And I think a lot of this comes from at least the quote is attributed to the former Intel CEO about like only the paranoid survive. And I was thinking about this a little bit. And it's like, and I feel like this idea is like pervasive in mostly in tech, right? It's like, hey, you got to be paranoid about your competition, otherwise you're going to miss out. And I'm going to just say, like, I think the Sun sign, like, I think what Mark Zuckerberg probably thinks, because I actually remember going to that campus when it's still a Sun campus, is that like, well, the people at Sun, they weren't paranoid. They kind of lost their, if you will, focus on what they were doing, and they ultimately lost out. And it's like, I remember being there at the time, not working so much on the servers, but working in like another part of the software division. And it's like, I think actually that wasn't the case at all, right? It wasn't that like people didn't know about it or people weren't, if you will, quote unquote, aware of it, or if you will, I don't know, paranoia. That's always like a weird word. So maybe that's a wrong way to do it. It's that like what really happens is like an external force like kind of happens to the company, right? Even if they kind of are aware of it, it doesn't mean you can like stop it, right? And I think in the case of Sun, this was the movement of Linux to run on inexpensive x86 machines, and how quickly that started to happen in the server market, which really, if you will, just undercut if you will, the lion's share of Sun's revenue in the Spark server line, right? And it's like, it's one of these things where it's like, I almost like attribute this to more like you're sailing a ship in the ocean, right? But like there are these storms that come out of nowhere that, like, you know, you can know that it could eventually happen to you, but doesn't mean as soon as you decide to go into the ocean, right? You just acknowledge that this can potentially happen. And it's not like you can just be like, I'm going to change a hurricane. I'm going to prevent it from happening. And so I was thinking about this in relationship to Facebook, because I think the thing that they're doing has happened to them. Like the storm that they're trying to weather is like Apple changed the privacy rules inside iOS. And it looks like it cost them $10 billion, according to them, in revenue. And it's like, I don't think it is like they're not paranoid about it. Like they knew it was going to happen, but it doesn't mean you could change anything, right? You know what I mean? You can't stop these things. And I think so. I guess that's why I was thinking a lot about this. Was around, you know, we keep thinking that like, oh, like paranoia is sort of like assuming that like if I was more aware of it, I could prevent this, right? And I guess I would think of it more around like being aware of the weather doesn't mean you can change the weather, right? Like you can't quickly go get $10 billion of revenue back doing anything. Now, maybe you can do it with renaming your company Meta. Maybe that eventually the metaverse will save you. But I would go back and say, Sun, you know, their metaverse bet at the time, when I say it, it's going to be kind of funny, but like it was to like, we need to embrace open source. There was this, like, if you were inside Sun, or if you remember, there was this big press release, Jonathan Torts, like Redshift, Blue Shift, and like everything's going to be open source, and Sun's going to, like, you know, if you will, the future is open source, and Sun's going to build a very profitable business around that. Well, that didn't really work out for lots of reasons that we won't go into today. And I think, you know, Zuckerberg and Facebook are making this big bet, but like it may not work out to them, right? And we may look back at them in the same kind of way. It's like, hey, you got hit by a big storm, right? You couldn't quickly replace the revenue. The metaverse bet you made didn't pay off, and people are going to be like, you know, write the same kind of book. Well, they just weren't really watching. And it's like, to me, it's like, I think you're being acted upon. So I guess my whole point of kind of bringing this up is like, maybe it's less about paranoia, but it's more about just acknowledging the external forces that are going to act on you. And I'm not saying you shouldn't react, but like, there's also limitations to what you can do.
Yeah. You know, it seems like, well, one, I agree. Like sometimes you're just fucked. Right, like, like, and you know, wouldn't it be funny if the reason they turned the sun sign around is like it was some kind of joke about like why buy a new sign when we could just turn this one around? kind of like if it was just being cheap, kind of like with you know, Amazon having doors for desks instead of real desks.
That would be funny.
I like the apocryphal version of the story rather than the snarky one, but you know, it does bring up, and maybe this is part of why I find it fascinating, is like, it seems, and it's not that there is a theory about this. It's like, this is what most corporate strategy is like basically coming up with a multi-decade sustainable set of strategies for your company. And what that ends up meaning is having a way of hedging out what your core strategies are. Now, the euphemism for this is like, you don't want to be a one-trick pony. Right? Like you don't want to have like one thing that you do as a business. And so if that one thing is threatened, you're out, right? Now, you know, Facebook has different faces, so to speak, of what it does. Like it's got WhatsApp and Instagram and then the core Facebook thing. But, you know, so that's why with the Netflix thing, we're always interested in how is Netflix going to expand into things? Does it get into gaming? Because that's another that's a kind of a hedge of another market that it can get into. And I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But of course, to bring up the successful person or company, well, I guess the Supreme Court in the U.S. says companies are people, so we can say person. That's fine. But like, you know, you have in contrast, you've got two contrasting cases. One, you have Google, who maybe still is, but was just like, they were like doing all sorts of different things. I assume, for fun and to explore new lines of business, right? Like, and maybe like, I wonder if Chromebooks must be successful. Like that was a weird.
But let's take Google. I think Google is another good example here. So Facebook is, if you will, in the middle of the storm. Someone has come to them and basically taken away 10 billion in revenue. They got to figure it out. Google, I still think 98% of the revenue, if not higher, is coming from ads, some form of ads. So take Google.
They haven't
for example.
Experienced the storm.
Yeah, and that's what I say. Like, so I don't know when or if it will ever happen, but what would happen? Let's say magically, for some reason, people stopped interacting with a search engine the way that they did. Like magically tomorrow, voice was a lot better, and they weren't able to show ads, right? With just suddenly, it's just like Google would be in just the same type of difficult position to like replace all that revenue. There's not like, oh, well, it turns out G Suite, Android, like those businesses are rounding error compared to the other things. And I think, and this would be the same kind of thing would be talked about. It's like, well, Google wasn't paranoid. They didn't see it coming. It's like, well, I don't know when or if that will ever happen. But like, if it did, just like it did for Sun, right? It's like you're being acted upon, and there just may not be a simple move for you to like
so that's good, because that's kind of where I was going towards, and I think it's clarified the thinking here, which is, so you could say like, all right, so if we want to do some strategic hedging, we should try a whole bunch of new businesses, right? And I think, I don't know if this is true, but I think maybe something that I keep coming back to it when I'm thinking about this is, when you're doing strategic hedging, you should not do big bet disruptive things, right? Because the point of a hedge isn't, well, I don't know in finance, but the point of a strategic hedge isn't like a bet. It's that if things go poorly, we'll be covered, right? Like that's what you're doing with the hedge. And so you don't want to do like a bunch of wacky, what do they call them, moonshot things as your strategic hedge. And instead, you want to like kind of spin up some more like pragmatic, I can see like eyesight to profitability, which is more like, I think, the way Amazon does like strategic hedging, right? Like they have all these different lines of business in various stages of development, especially they've been around like almost 30 years now, right? And they've successfully like created new lines of business that make lots of money, that fit into their overall corporate thing, that like, I mean, clearly if you were to take down Amazon retail, that would be a problem, right? But like all these other things, like they could weather, to use your metaphor, kind of weather the storm of like other things going down or not, right? Because they're like kind of strategically hedged out on all this stuff. Like, I guess, for example, like if their Alexa business just tanked, they'd probably be fine, right? Like it's not like the main thing that they have. And maybe even like, I'm not a good analyst of them, but like maybe even if their retail marketplace thing tanked, like, their third party seller stuff, they might also be fine, right? Like, and so like they have, like, that's an example of a strategy where like you're not really like, I mean, ironically, a lot of that money is used to fund like, rockets and shit like that, but whatever. But like, that's an example of like, we're not trying to bring internet to the world with like blimps,
right?
Or like, figure out how to recycle styrofoam, which that would be great, I guess. But like, we don't have these wacky projects that we're doing. They're very like, what if we had our own cosmetic line?
And I think what you're getting at is like, obviously the defensibility of a business to some degree, if you just look at it from an outsider, is like, oh, well, how different are the potential profit streams? So in the case of Amazon, at least the retail and AWS, we'd say those are pretty big independent kind of businesses. If one is down, the other can be up and vice versa. Whereas, I think in the case of Facebook and Google, right, they're really tied to advertising. Netflix today, really, they're sort of experiencing the storm. But again, this isn't a storm necessarily about another company. It's just sort of like they just found the ceiling. It's like 220 million subscribers seems to be the ceiling, right? At least at the moment. So, so again, like I don't, like why is it 220 million? I have no idea. But as they try to like, do something different in games, right? That's the same kind of thing. It's like they're not. Again, it's not that I think they aren't paranoid, right? It's like I keep coming back to. It's like as a business, or it just, and I think about this like when you're just running your own product lines. It's just like, what are the existential threats to you that could happen? Like I work in migrations. If suddenly everything was in the right place, that would be really bad, right? It'd be like, well, there's no one wants to move anything. Like, well, you know what I mean? Like that would not be a good sign for that business. Now, obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon, but someday, right? That is what's going to go on. I think Intel, let's just, throw one more out, is just to say they're really in the storm around. It's like, well, people are moving away from x86. People are moving away from the power envelope of those chips, moving towards, ARM and things like that. And it's like they built the entire company about being great at doing that. So maybe they go to do something else. But again, this is sort of like been coming for a long period of time. I think the people at Intel are really smart. I think they really saw this coming, but doesn't mean you can quickly change it and add back all this revenue. So I just think about that all the time. It's like, paranoia always comes back to like thinking you are the human being. If you were more diligent, you would have addressed this. But I just think a lot of times, and I think, Sun is being a good example of, you're going to be acted upon and you may or may not survive. And unfortunately, you may have a lot less control over it than you think you have.
Well, I think FY24 planning is coming up, Brandon. And so I think when we're going to have to go to the Software Defined Talk board, and we're going to have to take this into consideration. I think we got a lot of our eggs in one basket. I think we do. I think we've got, out of a dozen, I think we've got 13 eggs in one basket. And so we might need to think about how we're going to hedge things out.
That's right. If podcasts go away, there's not a secondary revenue stream here at Software Defined Talk.
We'll have to, maybe we'll get that intern program in place, and they can come up with the new business model. Start with cosmetics, see if that works out. It might be good. Now, just as a small topic, we like to discuss working at home, working remotely, and you came across, I think, good old Malcolm Gladwell. It's just a video clip, so this is a good little cable TV news segment here that we can have. But like, I watched the video clip. I think it was in TikTok, if I remember, or something. And he makes the point. Let me try to summarize his point, and then you can tell me what you think of it. Is that, like, I think what he was trying to say is that, and of course, let's do the thing of like, unless there is a reason otherwise, right? Like that, something that's inescapable. Like, you should not really want to work at home, because then you're like all alone working at home instead of sort of like out in the vibrant world and doing things. And I think for someone like him, an ideas person, also his age, like having grown up in journalism, it's sort of like, the whole way that you come across new ideas and test things out is there's a lot of serendipity. And I don't know if he covers that in his extensive au revoir, his books, the role of serendipity. But you encounter a lot of new ideas and people, and it's really like that conversation that where not everything, but a lot of things come out of it. And so if you're sitting at home all the time, and see, even that tone and phrasing gets to the point that is about to be made. But instead, if you're enjoying the bounty of being at home with family, it's kind of like, all those like Fidelity commercials where you see some very fit yet old person running around with kids and grandkids in vineyards, or vineyards. Like, if you've got that kind of environment going, you're still missing out on the thriving, lively workplace out there. And do you really want to be, a hermit with maybe some close family there, or do you want to go into the world?
Okay, so hold on. So the money quote here in the Gladwell clip that everyone can watch, I'll just quote it here, right? Is quote, "If it's just a paycheck, then what have you reduced your life to?" End quote. That's what he says. That is verbatim. And you can watch the clip on TikTok. And then I did find, someone asked me, it's like, well, maybe there's context to it. So there's a whole YouTube video, which is a long. So you can watch that to get it. And so most people are dunking on Gladwell around this. And like, I am happy to join in on that. Like, I think this argument is so easily dismissed that it's almost not even worth the trouble. Like, go read a million people that have done it on Twitter. What I think here, I was thinking about it, is like, I like Malcolm Gladwell's books. I read Blink and Tipping Point like pretty early in my career and really liked them. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, early Malcolm Gladwell would destroy this quote, right? He would have probably written an article or a book about this, talking about how it would be something about this. It's like, executives today believe culture is in a building, but it turns out, and then he would cite all these research studies that psychologists have found that like what really binds people together are this, and this, and they have nothing to do with being in an office, right? Like, I think early Gladwell could potentially write an entire book on this, certainly give a talk on this, and would absolutely eviscerate old Gladwell. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, and Gladwell likes sports, right? Him and Bill Simmons sometimes going together. And I was like, so we'll just kind of use like an analogy he would use. Is like, it's like, has he just lost his fastball, or does this like invalidate his earlier works, like Blink and Tipping Point? Like the 10,000 Hours I've seen attacked a lot. That one I have not read as much. And I think I kind of get the gist of it based on the thing. But I think people have basically come back and said, well, this is kind of BS. Like 10,000 Hours, there's really nothing to that, right? It's more about there's some data out there to suggest that that's not right, or there's sort of like inherent talents. Like, for example, to practice basketball for 10,000 hours, you still need to be like really, really tall, right? So there's kind of some stuff that goes in there. So anyway, I'll let other people take that away. But I was just thinking to myself, like, I don't know, could take, like, we're at least in the same age bracket. Like, and I think, you and I, like, you probably at some point, like, maybe we even talked about these books. Like, I think we probably liked them at the time, like Tipping Point, like How Ideas Spread. That was sort of like as the internet was growing. And that's why I think that book kind of spoke, was like, oh, like, you put out good content and like people share it, and that's how ideas spread. And that's probably not new, but it was like new to me, right? It was sort of like he was the one that sort of like opened my eyes. Like, that's really thinking about. So in some ways, like, seeing this quote was just like, it's like seeing a great athlete. And I'm like, yeah, just lost his fastball, like doesn't have it anymore. And he's just become like completely detached, right? Like, he just, like, again, like I said, I just repeating myself, is like early Gladwell would just destroy this quote. And so I don't know. I just wanted your take as maybe now person.
Now, for that quote in particular, like I could think of many reasons why that quote is. I'm trying to be like the kind person here. Well, so I'll put it two ways. I think what
good luck. I think there's just I think it's indefensible on every level. Go ahead. But
there you go. So I could see how that quote is indefensible or difficult, right? Now, on the other hand, like, everything that I just summarized isn't that quote, right? And so I wonder if. Like you do have to, like, kind of separate, like, so there's two things in that little clip, and as always, any little clip is just like an excuse to, like, talk about an idea that comes from it, maybe not the original source material or whatever, right? And so it seems like, so there is this idea of, like, well, yeah, if you're in the Hermitage, however you say that, like, you're at home as a hermit, like, yeah, you do cut off, like, all these other interactions. I mean, this is like the magic. Probably whenever we figure out if coffee and wine or butter are actually healthy or unhealthy for you, is probably when we'll also figure out if, for a creative, thriving place, you need to have in-person interactions or not. It seems to go back and forth between them. And so, like, that seems to be the one thing, is it's just like, oh, you've got this whole other source of, let's call it, energy and creativity and just kind of like flow of work that you cut yourself off from, which is kind of the part that I was hearing from it. But then you are right. But then he, like, and this is the magic of just, like, live talking instead of editing stuff, right? Then you kind of, he gets to this quote you were saying, and that becomes, there must be a name for this in rhetoric if I had that big poster of rhetorical moves, but it's kind of like the final stab, right? And now I'm going to add this quippy thing on the end to kind of, like, push my point over the edge. And that point being that, like, now I'm going to make another appeal, which is an appeal to, like, personal growth, right? And that personal growth being, I'm going to attach to a notion that I think has been, rightly so, much maligned in the past 10 or so years. This is where the word, like, privilege comes into play and everything. It's just like, well, not everyone, in fact, few people can choose the paycheck that they have, right? And so, like, if it is the case, like, it's not really a helpful argument to, like, add that you should choose a job that helps, you become your best self. So, like, that statement is just like, this is the kind of thing you would edit out nowadays is I would add a comment here being like, oh, I get what you're saying, but what you're doing is you're opening yourself up to really bad conversation in Twitter you don't want to be part of, right? Like a whole series of, like, well, how about people who can't choose their paycheck and they have to work for home? And then what about those people who don't have thriving creative energy in their workplace and they're just, like, mopping up kids' vomit somewhere?
Well, but flip it
or
around,
adults
but
vomit.
then the other, and the one that I think is most important, and the part that I think is why this is totally indefensible. What about people that are sort of like, I want to channel my energies into things that are outside of work, right? And
this is true as well.
And
Yes.
there are numerous things to say, like, yeah, I work because, because this idea, what have you reduced your life to? Well, you could, like, I may have many aspirations outside of work, and, anyone can think of them: parenting, children, education, politics, social movement. I mean, it's just limitless, right? There are limitless numbers of things that you can, if you will, quote unquote, like, reduce your life to, that are outside of work, that I think most people would say are very noble causes. So,
how about I'll suggest a rewording, not to rescue it, but just to make it more precise.
I mean, listen,
No. I'm not rescuing you. I'm just kind of, like, figuring out a different idea here, which is, like, if it's just a paycheck, like, then what have you reduced your work to, right? Like, I think that's the more, like, thoughtful question, which it can go two ways, or it can go three ways. The first way is like, well, I'm not the one who did the reducing. I have to do this, right? And so that this discussion is moot, right? There's a whole other kind of conversation we need to have about basically I have to do this even though it's not desirable or whatever, right? Like, and maybe I can manage that, maybe it's bad, whatnot. And the second one is like, I think the thing rhetorically or whatever this is going towards is like, yes, I should have the self-actualization and live my best life. And it's time for me to reevaluate. Like there's that. Now, the third one, I think, is what you're getting to and what, capitalism gone wild with too many screwdrivers. Like what I'm often like angling to is like, that's exactly what I've reduced my work to. Like, that's fantastic. Like, because I got this whole other part called life. And I would like to reduce my work as much to a paycheck as possible, to the point that if a paycheck was just auto-deposited into my bank every month and I had to do no work, that would be the best reduction of my work down to that.
But the meta, I guess the whole thing is like, we have taken our chance to dunk on him. At least I have. I have. You've done a good job trying to save him a little bit, Cote. I'm not convinced, but your efforts are noble. I think the meta conversation to me, Joe, is just like, Gladwell is a professional speaker. He hosts podcasts. He is probably one of the best-selling, at least let's say nonfiction, right, authors of our time in his genre, right? And like, I just think to me, it's like lost his fastball. Like, this is just like, I mean, if this is your job, right, and this is what you do, and you go out and you say this, it's like early Gladwell. I'll just return to what I said before. Would destroy this. And I just like, and then he can walk it back. He has access to Twitter. He has his own podcast, his own business. And it's like, I haven't seen anything yet. Right. Like I misspeak all the time. I'm sure like it would be fine if he said, when I misspoke as I've, reflected on it, but he hasn't done any of that. Like I haven't seen any of this stuff. So to me, it's just like, hey, sometimes, I don't know, maybe it is. It's like, don't ever meet your heroes. You just get disappointed. So maybe this is the whole thing. Don't watch heroes, or I don't know, authors you like, don't watch their TikTok interviews.
How was the rest of the interview? Maybe
it's super long. The rest of it, I think, was like, it was just kind of,
I'll have to check in on
I mean, I felt it, if anything else, because I was a little primed to just find like, inconsistencies, because he opens the interview talking about how he grew up in Canada. He didn't like to play hockey because he started late. And that he spent a lot of time alone as a kid, and he thought that was really a real advantage, right? This is like in the first 5 minutes of the interview. It's like, yeah, well, no shit. Like, you're like, okay, sometimes being at home, doing your own thing is a way to grow. And it's like, that seems to completely contradict his like, this whole like work from home thing that he says later in the thing. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I will be watching. Maybe it just hit a nerve to me because I liked his book so much. Like, hopefully, hopefully he redeems himself in some way.
I mean, to address questions you were asking earlier to close it out. Like, I haven't read his stuff in a long time just because, I don't know. As I've demonstrated, I don't like to criticize a lot of like people's creative efforts, but like for me, it was sort of like kind of a one-trick pony sort of thing. It's like, it's groundbreaking work to establish what, the Merlin Mann podcast call a turns out thing, where just like there's, which directly leads to Freakonomics and TED Talks and like this kind of like realm of like, but what about this, right? Like, sort of like knowledge that comes out there, which is fine. Like, I don't think that really existed when we were kids. I mean, it existed here and there, but it wasn't like, and then you also had like the thinking fast, thinking slow people, where you realize there was this like, whatever, I don't need to go over it. It was just a different way of thinking that we've added to everything else that I think is helpful. But I'm not sure. I don't know. It seems like I don't know if there's been interesting new things for me again there. And then the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, you got to be really careful if you're the turns out guy and you teach everyone to do turns out logic, because they're going to turn you out all the time, right? Like they're going to be, they're also going to be on you using your own medicine to like mess with you, right? Because like it's cool to be the turns out person, right? And so like you got to really like, it becomes stressful. It's almost one of those things where you just, at one point you got to be like, oh man, I'm sick of this shit, right? Like I'm going to move on to something else, but I don't know. It's probably, I haven't listened to him in a while. I should go listen to that interview. It would especially be good because, I mean, as you're pointing out, the other nice thing about, but a nice thing about interviews with people who work primarily in an edited medium, especially internet style interviews where you don't do any editing and you just let it go as long as possible and you post it, is like, you really get to know that person a lot better than just their presented edited self, which is one reason why podcasts are so great. Now, speaking of why podcasts are great, there's, in addition to the content, there's one reason why this podcast is so great. and it involves people sending you their mailing address, Brandon. What happens if they do that?
Well, they do. They send their mailing address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I will be happy to send them a sticker anywhere in the world. And also, a special plug here on Saturday, August 27th, we are going to do a Software Defined Talk meetup here in Austin, Texas, most likely at the Pine House down there, kind of in north central Austin at 6:30 p.m. So if you're interested in joining, there's no cost or anything. It's just a meetup, but I'm trying to get a head count. So there's a link here in the show notes. Just click on register for the meetup, put your name in there so I can get a head count. Come meet myself, Kote, other Software Defined Talk listeners. It sounds like we'll have some beers, we'll have some pizza, and hopefully it'll be a fun event for all.
Yeah, it will be fun. Pizza, beer, enjoyment. The cool evening of August 27th in Austin. It'll be good. Well, there's also a bunch of conferences going on. I think, I want to advertise conferences I am involved in. I'm going to be at DevOps Days Dallas. It's going to be August 24th and 25th. I'm giving a talk on the 24th. I think the opening keynote, unless I misread the program. And then we have the very next week, it's VMware Explore in San Francisco, August 29th to September 1st. If you haven't checked that out, the content catalog is live. There's a lot of great talks. You should come to it. It'd be great. I actually have a special page you can go to if you go to cote.io/explore. I have magic tracking links, which I've been told are attributable to me. And then also in December, we have the Spring One platform, December 6th to 8th. And there is still a open call for that conference in Texas, which is going to be January 16th and 19th. A call for papers open there. Now, with that, Brandon, what do you have to recommend this week?
My recommendation this week is an audiobook that I recently read. It is called Sea of Tranquility. It is by the same author who wrote Station 11. It was both a book and a miniseries on HBO. The author is Emily St. John Mandel, which I think is just a fantastic name. So if you've read that book or you saw that, it's a little bit different story, but it's kind of in the same kind of genre. So if you liked her previous work, I think you really like this one. I enjoyed it. It's a quick read. And also, Kote, I find I just like shorter books. I like books that just like good pacing and I don't know. There's just something my constant refrain is shorter. And this is sort of if you will, I found the right pace. I thought it was really well paced. I didn't feel like I don't like a lot of exposition. I don't like a lot of when people start describing landscapes, I'm out. I like stuff happening, right? Let's get on to the action. So I find her writing very appealing, and she does a good job with that. So if you're looking for something to listen to or read, check out Sea of Tranquility.
Well, did you isn't there a movie made of Station 11?
Yeah, there's a miniseries on HBO.
Or miniseries. Mm-hmm. Man, that's got to be the dream. To be an author, you get a book published, and then you get that money from a TV series. I know it's like a feast or famine sort of thing. So even though you may make $300,000 one year, well, first you got taxes, so that's an annoyance, and then you got to make that spread over 2 or 3 years or whatever. But still, to see all that stuff come.
Well, two quick things. One, as I was reading, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a good movie." So, see, I always like when you're kind of I feel of course, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people read this book, but you feel oh, I discovered it. I'm sure it's in production. I'm sure the movie rights have been sold or whatever. So I think that part is good. But then what I've read though is the authors, because of the way this Hollywood works, people that say why they get money, they get some money to sell the story. It never feels the authors never, if you will, make a ton. I think you have to be super, super successful.
Sure.
A Stephen King. So that's a weird thing. It's but they made this really successful thing. It's it's just not the way Hollywood works. The money doesn't flow to the authors; it flows to the directors. So
yeah.
I'm sure she's doing fine. She's written good books.
And I think in my dream of this, it's not a one-time thing. It's just you do this every couple of years. Every book you have has some deal, so it's a continuous flow of cash.
Yeah, I like it. I want to do it. Yeah, but just only thing that separates us, and maybe we should outsource that. Have we ever written a successful book? I don't know, Kote. We'll have to see.
Well,
maybe someone could do that for us.
I think the movie we would be optioning would be called McKinsey Titles, the movie. I think is what we would be going for. Well, my recommendation, I am not going to be able to pronounce the author's name. I guess I know how to say Nguyen, his last name. I think it's a him. I should check. But Yeah, there you go. It's this book that I don't remember buying, but I started reading called The Sympathizer, and it's a book about a guy who escapes Vietnam, during the last days of the Vietnam War, and starts fitting into American society. And it's extremely well written and fun to read. I've only read like 20% of it, so I don't know if it turns terrible, but it's a fun book if you're looking for something. As I was, this subject matter is not so relaxing and casual, but the way it's written is a good example of just like an easy to read book. And the content is nice as well. Well, with that, you should get off. You got 2 books to read this summer. This has been Software Defined Talk. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/372. You can find links to things we've mentioned. Some things we mentioned don't have links. And then also things that we did not mention. You should join our Slack channel, join the conversation, everything. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Good as always.
Just in time, because my daughter just came in here.
And it sounds like it's over. All right. Well, that's good. Glad to have-
Bye-bye. Yep.
Yeah. So much time. All right. Hey, well, thanks for everyone watching the stream. We know it's a little early this week. We had to move the schedule around, so we're probably prime time meeting time for work, but I appreciate everyone hanging in there. So yeah, one more plug for all the streamers. Go check out our meetup. If you're in Austin, we'd love to see you in and have some pizza with you. So, all right, Coach, any final words?
No, do you want to say goodbye? Say bye. Here. Say bye again. Oh, we missed the cute moment.
No, not happening. Well,
Nope.
sometimes it doesn't happen. Well, next time she can say goodbye. So.
No, I have no final words.
All righty. We'll talk to you all next time.